You know, no matter how legendary the NBA player is, they're always gonna decline. You know, nobody can play basketball forever. And that's definitely the case for Scottie Pippen, who went from being one of the greatest players in NBA history, he still is, but he went from being a consistent scorer, dominant player, to only scoring a few points in his eventual final game with the Bulls and in NBA altogether. So what led to the decline of Scottie Pippen's play, his attitude, and overall his perception as an NBA player? Well, we're going to answer that question right now in this video, coming up next. The legendary Scottie Pippen was not just Michael Jordan's sidekick, but a giant in his own right, a 7-time All-Star, and a key figure in the Chicago Bulls dynasty. Pippen's game was a thrilling blend of defense, scoring ability, and playmaking. Standing at a towering 6'8", Pippen's wingspan and agility made him a lethal force on both ends of the floor. Not only could he sink shots from anywhere on the court, but he also posed a formidable challenge to the opposition, constantly disrupting their offensive plans. Nicknamed Pip, his unique style and consistent performance made him an indelible icon in the history of the NBA. However, nobody stays on top forever. Pippen eventually found it increasingly difficult to maintain those high standards to live up to, while his career was far from over. The once dazzling player seemed to lose his shine, leaving fans and critics wondering what had happened to the once great Scottie Pippen. Growing up in the small town of Hamburg, Arkansas, Scottie Pippen showed a lot of promise as a young athlete. Being the tallest of 12 siblings, his natural athleticism was evident at an early age. As a point guard at Hamburg High School, Pippen led the team to several local and regional victories, including the state playoffs. He earned all-conference honors as a senior, yet his small-town roots meant he was largely overlooked by major college programs. Imagine that, Scottie Pippen was not offered any college scholarships coming out of high school. Despite this oversight, Pippen's perseverance and raw talent became evident when he walked on at the University of Central Arkansas. Not exactly known for their basketball program, but he made his mark anyway. He was just 6'1" when he started, but he grew to 6'8" by his senior year, and that's what made him so great early on. With the skills of a point guard and the height of a forward, Pippen was a unique, potent threat on the court. His dynamic abilities led him to becoming a standout player at the University of Central Arkansas, earning him All-American honors his senior year. One drawback at the time was that Central Arkansas played in the National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics and not the prestigious NCAA, which meant Pippen flew under the radar of the media and many pro scouts. Still, his immense talent could not be denied. He was eventually noticed by the Chicago Bulls, who traded for him in the 1987 draft. Scottie was selected 5th overall by the Seattle Supersonics, but was promptly traded to the Bulls. The move to Chicago would prove fortuitous and mark the beginning of Pippen's ascent into NBA stardom. Paired with Horace Grant, another rookie that was very capable in his own right, they formed a young forward duo capable of challenging the best in the league. Although both came off the bench their rookie seasons, they soon became household names and key contributors to the Bulls' success. Obviously, Michael Jordan was an important mentor to Scottie. MJ constantly pushed him to elevate his game and maximize his potential, which turned Pippen into one of the NBA's top defenders and an offensive powerhouse. They formed a symbiotic relationship on the court, each one's strengths complementing the other. After official team practices, they would play one-on-one, an experience that Scottie found immensely enriching. It was during these duels that Pippen developed his defensive skills even further, studying Jordan's moves and adapting his game accordingly. This contributed to his reputation as an all-court player, which was somebody who could score, defend, and bring his team to victory single-handedly. During the 1988 NBA playoffs, Pippen claimed the starting small forward position and began to leave his own unique mark on the game. The Bulls were able to reach the conference semis for the first time in over a decade. Next season, Pip recorded 16.5 points per game on 48.9% shooting and 6.7 rebounds, all his career highs at that point. Additionally, he was 3rd in the league in steals with a total of 211. All that and his spectacular style of play propelled him to his first All-Star game in 1990. However, it was not until the 90-91 season that Scottie Pippen truly began to emerge as a superstar. Pippen's scoring average jumped to 17.8 points per game. He led the team in both blocks and assists and was 2nd in both steals and rebounds. All these stats are even more remarkable considering he was playing alongside Michael Jordan, who is of course widely considered to be the greatest player in the history of basketball.
Scottie played a key role in the Bulls' first NBA championship in 1991, helping lead the Bulls to a 4-1 victory over the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals. His defensive prowess was evident as he managed to limit Magic Johnson, one of the game's most prolific players, during the crucial games. Scottie's role in the Bulls' first three-peat from 91 to 93 cemented his place in NBA history.
Over the next few seasons, Pippen definitely improved greatly. From a shooting percentage standpoint, his defense improved everything. Even him as a leader broadly improved. He became the player that we all know and recognize today as one of the all-time greats.
In the 93-94 season, with Jordan temporarily retired, Pippen took the reins and showed his full capabilities. He averaged 22 points per game, the highest of his career, and led the Bulls in three major statistical categories: scoring, assists, and blocks. His remarkable season led him to finishing third in MVP voting that year. So what happened in the infamous 1994 NBA playoffs that led to this change of reputation? It was Game 3 against the New York Knicks, and there were 1.8 seconds left on the clock and the Bulls were down by 1 point. Phil Jackson drew up a play that had Tony Kukoc taking the last shot and not Pippen. Scottie, feeling sidelined and hurt, refused to re-enter the game. The Bulls won that game on Kukoc's buzzer beater, but Pippen's act of defiance cast a shadow on his leadership. It was a pivotal, controversial moment in his career that many remember, overshadowing a lot of his performances on the court.
His performances were seriously spectacular if you go back and watch some of those Bulls games, and man, I feel like he earned his rights to be called one of the greatest players of his very talented generation. So personally, I feel like this was pretty petty on Scottie Pippen's part. I mean, they ended up winning the game, though you might want to question Phil Jackson in terms of how he undermined Scottie Pippen's confidence by trusting Tony Kukoc over Pippen himself. I mean, there's a conversation to be had about all of that at least. But was this the moment that his career started to decline altogether? Well, we'll find out coming up next. Overall, though, I will say it definitely is a sort of turning point for better and for worse. In general, though, the Bulls were at least listening to trade offers for him at the time.
Bulls general manager Jerry Krause was known for his shrewd and often cold-hearted decision-making. While his acumen for identifying talent was undisputed, he had a reputation for valuing future assets over maintaining healthy relationships with established players. No one was safe from being traded, not even the invaluable Scottie Pippen. It was reported that Krause was getting ready to ship Scottie back to Seattle in exchange for Shawn Kemp, move Tony Kukoc into Pippen's position as the starting small forward, and let Kemp dominate the paint. When Craig Sager asked Scottie if he thought he was going to be traded, he responded, "I hope I am." This response showed the extent of Pippen's disillusionment with the Bulls management and perhaps some attitude issues. However, the rumored trade never happened. Pippen stayed with the Bulls and the rumors were put to rest as Michael Jordan made his return to the league in March of 1995. Despite the tumultuous times, Pippen still managed to perform at a high level. That season, he led the Bulls in every major statistical category, points included. At the time, there was only one player in NBA history who would accomplish that feat, Dave Cowens of the Boston Celtics in the 77-78 season. This marked Pippen as a unique player capable of added value in every aspect of the game. The other four players who have since matched it are Kevin Garnett, LeBron James, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic. Anyway, the Jordan-Pippen duo was back and the Bulls were determined to make another run for the title. Dennis Rodman joined the team, so you can imagine the intensity and grit the Bulls brought to the court. Rodman, with his tenacious rebounding, added another layer to the Bulls' formidable defense alongside Pippen and Jordan's elite defensive skills. The trio formed the backbone of what was to become one of the most dominant teams in NBA history.
Even to this day, I still say some of those mid-90s Bulls teams are the best NBA teams ever assembled. And you can talk about the Warriors, like the recent Warriors teams, all you want. That's a conversation to be had at least, but to me, going back watching those games, nothing compares to how dominant, especially the 96 Bulls, were. A lot of that had to do with their big three, and Pippen was a big part of that big three with his intelligent play and his leadership abilities as well as his killer defense. He also had another defensive force in Dennis Rodman on the court, and of course the great one, the GOAT, some would argue, His Airness Michael Jordan, who was an incredible scorer and leader himself. I mean, when you describe things that way, you can understand why they were so unstoppable.
The Bulls went on a tear during the 95-96 season, racking up an NBA record 72 regular season wins and coasted through the playoffs to claim their fourth title. Pippen's contributions were monumental. He was an indispensable member of this championship-winning behemoth, further proving his status as a top-level talent in the league. That same summer, in 1996, Pippen balled out at the Summer Olympics in Atlanta as a part of the Dream Team 2. Demonstrating his versatility, he was a key player in helping the United States secure a gold medal, adding to an already incredible year for him. In fact, he became the first player in history to win an NBA championship and Olympic gold in the same year, twice. But his mental state was far from stable. The friction with Bulls management, scrutiny from the media, and the pressure of maintaining his high-level performance took a toll on Pippen mentally. He was dealing with personal issues off the court as well, which further complicated matters. It's obvious he wanted to progress as a leader, but especially with Mike being back, Scottie faced a decline as he had to take the backseat again. He was relegated to playing second fiddle, a role that he had reluctantly accepted during Jordan's first stint with the team. The uneasiness of their relationship began to show cracks. Jordan was always the first option for the Bulls, and he would be going forward. He was the face of the franchise, understandably so. Pippen's unique capabilities were often overshadowed by MJ's overwhelming presence. Hailed as the greatest of all time, Jordan's achievements often left little room for Pippen's contributions to be adequately recognized. Pippen had a breakout season when Jordan was in retirement, proving to the world that he could lead a team and carry them through games. But with Jordan back, Pippen was back to his supporting role. For a player of Pippen's caliber, this would be a hard pill to swallow. He was one of the league's premier players, but he was once again playing in MJ's shadow. As brilliant as Pippen was, he was continually viewed and valued as one part of the bigger MJ machine, the guy who made things easier for Jordan instead of being recognized as a standout player in his own right. Pippen's frustrations with his role weren't just about ego, according to him. It was also about a desire for validation of his worth, his skills, and his vital contributions to the team's success. During the 96-97 season, both Pippen and Jordan were selected among the 50 greatest players in NBA history, marking an important recognition for Pippen's talents. And don't get me wrong, despite the decline and his secondary role on the Bulls, Scottie still looked good on the court. On February 18, 1997, he scored a career-high 47 points in a game against the Denver Nuggets and was named Player of the Week that week. Yes, the decline was inevitable. It was his fifth and final time to receive that honor. From there, it was a series of highs and lows for Pippen. In the final game of the regular season, he missed a game-winning three-pointer, leaving the Bulls with a bitter taste in their mouths as they ended the season and were not able to set the record for back-to-back 70-win seasons. Critics were quick to close in, underscoring doubts about Pippen's ability to step up in big moments. The Bulls were still a force to be reckoned with for sure, and they proceeded to go deep in the playoffs that year as well, but Scottie injured his foot in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Miami Heat, which drastically affected his performance. The injury required him to play through severe pain, and his productivity inevitably suffered from it. Nevertheless, the Bulls still went on to win another title that year, and you already know who was named the Finals MVP. Yep, Michael Jordan, for the fifth time. The 97-98 season began with mounting tension and uncertainty for the Bulls. Pippen had purposefully delayed his offseason surgery in an attempt to assert some control over his situation with Chicago. This move meant that he could be out for the first part of the new season, creating quite a stir within the team and the league. Jerry Krause had made it known that he was open to trading Pippen, igniting further tension, while Scottie responded with his own trade demand. From what I know, according to then league pay scale, Pippen was severely underpaid compared to other players of his stature. Think about it, he was the 122nd highest paid player in the NBA despite being considered one of the top players in the previous years. In spite of all this, Pippen ultimately stayed with the team for the rest of the season. No contract renegotiation was made, no extra incentives were offered, Scottie just had to accept the reality of this brutal situation, once again. The Chicago Bulls, of course, went on to complete their historic second three-peat, winning their sixth NBA championship in the spring of '98. Pippen injured his back in Game 6 of the finals, but he still managed to suit up against the Utah Jazz, determined not to let his team down. His tenacity and resilience clearly demonstrated the essence of who he was as a player. Yet, after that season, Pippen's time with the Bulls was over. He was traded to the Houston Rockets in a sign-and-trade deal, leaving behind his legacy and a myriad of mixed emotions and unanswered questions in Chicago. In Houston, Scottie joined forces with Hakeem Olajuwon and Charles Barkley, forming a new trio of players attempting to repeat the Bulls' success. It was quite an ambitious plan, and in theory, it sounded great. Three NBA legends, each with their own unique skills and experiences, could certainly form a formidable team. But the reality of playing together was more challenging than expected. The Rockets had a mixed season, struggling at times to gel as a team. Pippen's role was again overshadowed, this time by Barkley's formidable personality and Hakeem's status as a Rockets legend. It was an uphill battle for Pippen as he was continually compared to his prime years with the Bulls and expectations were just set too high. Team chemistry, which was the key to the Bulls' success arguably, was missing in Houston. The Rockets missed the spark that had defined Pippen's partnership with Jordan. Despite their individual successes, the trio of Pippen, Barkley, and Olajuwon failed to resonate as a cohesive unit, much to the disappointment of fans and basketball pundits alike. The struggles on the court were further exacerbated by the off-court tensions between Pippen and Barkley. Their relationship deteriorated significantly, and the press had a field day with their public disagreements. Nearing the end of the season, it was clear that the Rockets' experiment had not worked out as planned. The team was eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, falling far short of what they had hoped to achieve. Pippen and Barkley continued to exchange words in the offseason, as Barkley appeared on ESPN and made claims about Pippen's unwillingness to adapt to the Rockets' playing style. The feud escalated when Pippen retaliated, criticizing Barkley's leadership and work ethic. This spat eventually led to Pippen's departure from Houston. In a surprising move, he was traded to the Portland Trail Blazers for the 99-2000 season. There, Pippen played more of a support role, using his wealth of experience to bolster the team's young core.
So, decline or not is really up to perspective, but at the very least, Pippen still had some years left on his basketball career, and he was a very valuable member of those Blazers teams. I remember relatively young, I started watching basketball in 2002, watching those Blazers teams. They were a lot of fun. Pippen was a big part of that, and he was amazing, especially in that 99-2000 season, which I didn't watch in real time, but going back, pretty impressive stuff from a leadership standpoint. Even though his scoring kind of declined with the 12.5 points per game average, he still was his usual amazing self on defense and still was a leader those Trailblazers teams desperately needed.
That season, the Blazers had made it to the Western Conference Finals, where they faced the Los Angeles Lakers, led by the dynamic duo of Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant, and coached by no one else but Phil Jackson, the very same man who had guided Pippen to 6 championships with the Bulls. The series turned out to be an epic showdown, with Portland surprisingly pushing the Lakers to 7 games. Old Pip had a chance to shine in Game 7, but unfortunately he struggled big time, scoring only 12 points on poor shooting 3 for 10 from the field. It was a heartbreaking performance, especially considering that the Blazers had a 15-point lead entering the fourth quarter. But then the Lakers staged an incredible comeback, outscoring Portland 31-13 in the final quarter to seize the victory and advance to the NBA Finals and ultimately win the chip. The Blazers' collapse, widely known as the fourth quarter meltdown, was a punch in the gut for Pippen, who had hoped to lead his team to the finals and perhaps earn his 7th ring to his collection. In the 2000-2001 season, Pippen returned with the Trailblazers, resolute to strengthen the team for another playoff run. This squad, however, wasn't able to replicate the success from the previous season, as Pippen was forced to miss 18 games due to tinnitus in his right elbow. It was his shooting hand, and this spelled problems for his performance on the court. His scoring average dropped further to 11.3 points per game, his assist numbers saw a decline, and his overall efficiency was at an all-time low. In spite of his declining health and performance, Pippen's leadership qualities did not wane. His veteran presence, strategic insights, and his experience with high-pressure games provided the team with essential intangibles. He continued to inspire the younger players, guiding them in their professional development. However, despite all the contributions, Portland failed to advance past the first round of the playoffs that season, as they were knocked out by the Los Angeles Lakers yet again. What's even more disheartening is they were swept. The Lakers closed out the series 4-0 and went on to repeat as champions. Pippen stayed for 2 more seasons in Portland, playing largely in a reduced role due to his physical limitations, and his scoring averages continued to decline, as did his overall contribution. The Blazers actually made the playoffs both years though, and they were eliminated in the first round each time, and another sweep in 0-2 against the Lakers, and a hard-fought 7-game series in 0-3 against the Dallas Mavericks. Pippen's influence was still deemed valuable, though his impact on the court was far from the heydays of the Bulls or even his stint with the Rockets. In 2003, Pippen's contract with the Blazers came to an end. There was speculation about his retirement, but the 38-year-old wasn't ready to hang up his sneakers just yet. Instead, he chose to return to Chicago, signing a 2-year deal with his former team, the Bulls. It was a homecoming of sorts, but it was also an acknowledgement of the fading twilight of his career. Returning to the Bulls was a sweet and sour experience for Pippen. His leadership was appreciated and his legacy was celebrated, but on the court his limitations were clearer than ever. His scoring average dipped into a career-low 5.9 points per game, and his minutes were significantly reduced. Additionally, the Bulls were in a rebuilding mode with a roster full of young, inexperienced players. Despite these challenges, Pippen's presence made a difference in terms of instilling discipline and fostering a winning mentality among the young Bulls. His experiences in the NBA, particularly his winning stints with the Bulls in the 90s, served as an invaluable lesson for these aspiring athletes. In addition to his mentoring role, Pippen continued to contribute on the court, though not in the same dominating way he once did. His defensive instincts remained sharp, and his basketball IQ allowed him to make key plays. Though no longer a star, Scottie Pippen was still a respected veteran who would offer much to the team. Pippen's second stint with the Bulls wasn't as flashy or noteworthy as his first, yet it carried its own significance. In those final years, he symbolized the changing times, bridging the gap between the golden era of Bulls basketball and the future, which had some bright spots coming up soon, actually. Despite the decline in his performance, he was an iconic figure in the locker room, respected and admired by teammates old and new. Scottie played his final game on February 2, 2004, scoring 2 points, grabbing 1 rebound, and dishing out 3 assists in 8 minutes of play in a 109-97 loss to who else but the Seattle Supersonics. The Bulls' record that season was 23-59, which wasn't good, and this marked the first time in Pippen's career that his team did not reach the playoffs. Can you imagine a more brutal farewell? Scottie Pippen, the man who had been at the forefront of basketball greatness, ending his career on a losing team with a dismal record. It was a stark contrast to the dazzling heights he had once reached alongside Michael Jordan with the Bulls in the 90s.
So even though it's a disappointing end, Pippen still has a remarkable legacy as one of the better players in the 90s and definitely a great teammate to an amazing Bulls squad back in those days. Without him, who knows if Jordan would have won as many titles. I still think he would have won some, but he definitely wouldn't have won as many, if you ask me. But what did you think of Scottie Pippen's decline? Let us know in the comments section, and if you want more Scottie Pippen content, we have this video here about how he's lost it, or, according to some people anyway, and that focuses more on his attitude with this whole decline he's been going through here. Anyway, check it out. Basketball Dive out.